Everyone uses the internet. I do too. Everyone speaks about the internet. I do too. On such a topic, the risk of being banal is rather high. I have decided to run this risk because the huge technological revolution that has taken place beneath our very eyes and that has profoundly modified our existence, even in the most trivial aspects of daily life, must be analyzed in terms of its implications. Someone has written that the internet is a democratic instrument. Taken to the letter, this statement is false. I would correct this by adding, it is a potentially democratic instrument. Right now, the motto of the internet is encapsulated in the politically incorrect words of Jesus. Whoever has will be given more. Matthew 13, 10, 12. Instead of reducing the distances tied to the social hierarchy, the internet exacerbates them. To carry out research by surfing the web, we need to know how to master the instruments of knowledge. In other words, we need to dispose of a cultural privilege tied to social privilege. Schools need the internet, but the internet needs a school where real teaching is going on. The internet not only back references to books, but presupposes books. But the book here is a metaphor. It is the instrument that teaches us to master the extraordinary speed of the internet. But how much of Google is really new, beyond its super powerful technology? Several historians have asked themselves this question. First of all, Roger Chartier, he has argued that, on the one hand, Google induces a fragmentary reading, which isolates fragments of texts, sentences, words. On the other, it erases the specificity of the material media in which the texts had always been inscribed, transferring them onto a single medium, that is, the computer screen. It's true. Google allows us to take possession of fragments of texts, sentences, single words, without obliging us to read the texts they belong to in their integrity. And yet, this fragmented reading has always been part of anyone's reading. I might add that reading, an activity today shared by most of humankind, not by everyone, is also a far more complex activity than its theorizations. No theory describes, let alone explains, the countless associations, connections, relations that are rapidly triggered off at the moment in which we start to read any text whatever. In order to define these relations between different texts, a term has been invented, intertextuality, but it is like reinventing the wheel. As the historians know, the instruments for carrying out operations of that kind have existed for a long time. Indexes. The Bible indexes were introduced in the 12th century in manuscripts that allowed university professors and preachers, though these were often the same people, to prepare lessons and sermons more rapidly based on themes. In the 13th century, the concordances, which listed the words of the Bible in alphabetical order, themselves became an autonomous literary genre, a book destined to being used instead of being read. But isn't this also the principle that inspires Google? Naturally, among the possible uses of the concordances or of Google, there is also an integral and very intense reading of the text, of the Bible or any other book. One kind of reading does not exclude the others. Each one of us alternates them, not only depending on the type of text, but within the text itself. None of us reads an advertising poster, a newspaper, a love letter, the poem of a poet we cherish in the same way. But also before the most ephemeral text, we can stop to reflect. And even the densest text is liable to what in French is called lecture diagonale, that is diagonal reading. In the light of these obvious considerations, I feel it is legitimate to put forward a thesis that perhaps cannot be wholly taken for granted, and that is that Google is an extension, a prosthesis of our body and our mind, a prosthesis capable of huge feats of which we should never be capable. The possible uses of Google is under-theorized. To make a step forward, we need empirical material duly analyzed. In other words, case studies. Everything I shall say from now onwards is true. Only the names of the two people involved have been substituted with their consent with invented names. The name of the location has been replaced with an X. But first, I will make the case intelligible. My first book, The Benandanti, published in 1966, which came out in Brazil in 1988 with the title Os Andarilhos do Bem. It is based on a series of trials held by the Inquisition Tribunal in Friuli between the 16th and 17th centuries. On September 12th, 2010, I received a letter coming from Russia. Here is a part of it. Quote, I decided to write you this letter because I want to understand a few things, and I think that you are the only one who can help me. From the first day of my life, a lot of strange things have happened to me. When I was a child, I spoke with a voice in my head. I always heard my own voice and this other one. When I was 12, we lost our dad. I was in the water and started to sink. He saved me and drowned. 1 month later, I was walking with my brother, and I saw a small shadow on the ground. It started to grow. Firstly, I thought it was a big bird, but then I saw a human shape with huge wings. He was holding the rod in his hand. I saw the shadow of my angel keeper. He spoke with me. He said, now you will see me. You needed to understand who you are. I was in a state of shock. I started to cry. Did you see that? That's an angel. But my brother didn't see him. He thought that I was crazy. Diana went on to say that at that age, now she was 21, she had started to suffer from crisis attacks, evidently epileptic fits, that she described in great detail. I was 19, Diana is writing, when I read the legend about Benandanti. Of course, I was surprised, but I knew that's all. The angel told me the legend when I was 13. I thought that it was just my imagination. Well, Father Ioanni from Friuli visits our church 1 or 2 times during the year. He was very surprised when I asked him about the Benandanti legend. I finished the letter, with mixed feelings. That evening, talking about it with 2 friends, I put forward the hypothesis that it was a hoax. Someone has wanted to make fun of me and my research hypothesis, fabricating a letter written by a girl born with coal who thought she was a Benandante. Too many coincidences. And yet, in the questions raised in the letter, I felt the ring of authenticity. I wrote to my Friulian friends, asking them to find the email address of a Salesian called Giovanni Furlan residing in Moscow. The answer came the day after. He wrote, Diana is one of the brethren of our parish in X. To tell the truth, it was she Diana, to my great astonishment, who spoke to me of Benandanti. I had not heard any mention of them for some 10 years, perhaps since the years when I was an undergraduate student enrolled at languages at Udine University in 1968, unquote. I could not help sharing Don Furlan's great astonishment. After all, it had been my book, published in 1966, that had brought the Benandanti back to light, as they had been all but forgotten, even in Friuli. How had Diana managed to come across the Benandanti? I asked her. Very simple, she replied. I'd asked Google, born with coal, in Russian, of course. Checking the matching item in Wikipedia in English, I found a link to my book on the Benandanti. By following my name, Diana had found an interview that I'd given years earlier, while I'd been taking part at a summer school close to St. Petersburg. 2 moves on the web chessboard had allowed Diana to find the Benandanti and me to find the Friulian priest identified as Father Ioanni. Google is, as everyone knows, a very powerful research engine. But without a question, Google is a lifeless machine. What question had triggered off Diana's research? Quote, I read that the cult is still alive, and I read that it ended many years ago. Where is the truth? And how can I find them? How can I to connect with them? I hope I'm not the only one, unquote. I reread these words and think that they stem from the painful experience of illness. However, I cannot prove it. I'm just putting forward some conjectures. At the time when she started to suffer from epileptic fits, Diana must have wondered, why is this happening to me? Is there something special in me, something that has predestined me to the illness from my birth? Perhaps being born with coal? By means of Google, by means of the discovery of the Benandanti, Diana must have found the beginning of an answer which transformed her disease by inscribing it into a cultural constellation. Google, this powerful instrument of cultural homogenization and thus control, albeit indirect, can be used in different and unpredictable directions. For example, by helping a Siberian girl to subtract herself from her fate, from what seems to her to be her fate, building a piece of identity completely extraneous to the context in which she lives. In a few minutes, Diana abolished time and space, 5 centuries, 15,000 kilometers, 8 time zones. She autonomously re-elaborated in a totally anti-historical way, a historical tradition of which only an indirect echo had reached her. Idealizing Google would be senseless. Refusing to see the energy it can release would be equally senseless. Diana's case shows that Google is at the same time a powerful instrument of historical research and a powerful instrument of cancellation of history, because in the electronic present, the past dissolves. This contradiction is already modifying the world we live in and in which future generations will live. The world's present and the future have become more fragile, and the past has too, at least the past as the historians see it.
Assunto forte assim, para a gente pensar e rever mesmo a respeito da internet, do Google, das informações que a gente tem, dessa nova maneira de conhecer o mundo, de ter informação.
O caso que ele contou é bastante instigante, né, dá bastante margem para reflexão.
O nome mesmo está dizendo, é Fronteiras do Pensamento. É de uma importância assim, fundamental e uma estrutura muito organizada, muito eficiente em todo sentido.